Hey everyone, welcome back to another video from A Man Talks FPL SC. In today's video, we're going through my Game Week 12 team selection. Finally, the international break is coming to a close. The Premier League is coming back this weekend, so hallelujah, FPL is going to be back. So if you guys enjoyed this video, really appreciate a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing as well if you do enjoy the content, but let's get straight into it. So if you haven't previously seen my Game Week 12 initial thoughts video, I did have a bit more of an in-depth review of how I went in Game Week 11. If you haven't seen that, do check that out. But if not, I'll still go through really quickly how I went in Game Week 11. It was a good week. I scored 68 points. And at this point in time, I'm pretty happy with how the team's looking. We had another green arrow up to about 25k. The past few weeks have been pretty good. I went from around 250k to 25k in just a few weeks, which kind of shows how tightly packed still the overall rankings are. So I wouldn't be too concerned if you're not maybe where exactly you'd want to be. I'm not trying to get too ahead of myself. I understand it's a very good place to be, but things can change very, very quickly. And especially now, coming out of this international break, we're going to get into a period of a lot of rotation, a lot of fixtures coming thick and fast, so you can definitely make up a lot of ground if you stay engaged in the game. But overall, looking at the team, pretty happy with my goalkeeper and my defenders. Can't really see too much wrong there. Midfielders, do them good in terms of Rafinha and Salah, not so good in terms of Mbeumo. And in the forwards, Tony, Vardy, Antonio not doing so well, but Antonio I have a bit more faith in, but the others not so happy about. In terms of my bench, what I've got there, I did actually bench Mason Mount. He could also be on the chopping block. He hasn't really been available really for the past couple of game weeks. Livramento still ticking along. Not really looking to make any major changes with him. And Brownhill, again, just that kind of fifth midfielder, giving me 2 points a week. But overall, pretty happy with how the team is. I've got 2 free transfers going into Game Week 12, so let's see what I'm planning to do. So this is how my team is currently set up looking at Game Week 12. As I mentioned, with my goalkeeper and defenders, I'm pretty happy with all of them. I'm not looking to really make any changes here. And I think, Ramsdale has proven to be a very, very good shot stopper for Arsenal. They are coming into a tough matchup against Liverpool away from home. But we saw just only a few weeks back that even against Leicester, he has that ability to make a lot of saves. I do expect Arsenal to concede in this game, but with Ramsdale's good shot stopping ability, we could see some save points here. So I'm not going to be switching him for Ben Foster, who does have another tough matchup as well in terms of Manchester United at home. So I don't really see any benefit in terms of swapping the two, and I'll just be playing Ramsdale and hoping for some good save points here, but not expecting a clean sheet. The 4 defenders, all very, very attacking. Trent, Reece James, Cancelo and Chilwell. Their matchups are particularly amazing. I mean, Arsenal for Liverpool is not the easiest. Chilwell and Reece James do have Leicester away, but Leicester have not been keeping clean sheets, so I'm hopeful for some attacking returns from the pair of them. Obviously, Chelsea defense is outstanding, so we could get some clean sheet potential there. Cancelo, Everton home, I think is actually a pretty good fixture. Everton, without Doucouré, have not looked very good in attack, so I do think that there definitely is a clean sheet on offer there for Manchester City. The question is whether Cancelo is actually going to play, because I would expect the game just after the international break. Manchester City do also have PSG and then West Ham, the 2 games straight after the fixture against Everton. You would see that Everton potentially is the easiest of those 3, so we could see some rotation. So in any case, we do have good subs on the bench in terms of Livramento to come on for Cancelo if he does get rotated, but we're not going to be playing any silly games. We're going to be playing Cancelo, and hopefully he does start for us. Now, there's definitely some big benching dilemmas with my attackers here. You can see, Salah captaincy. I don't think I'm going to be veering away from the Salah captaincy this particular game week, even though Arsenal defense is pretty good and I've got the goalkeeper there. I just don't think we can really back against Salah still. You could potentially go for a Spurs player, but I just don't think there are any other outstanding options. I think Ronaldo, though, could be a consideration if you do have him. I don't, so Salah's going to be staying as captain for me. Currently playing the 2 Brentford players in Mbeumo and Tony. I'm not sure if this is the right strategy, and maybe if I should bench one and instead play Livramento or Mason Mount just to kind of hedge my bets, because they haven't looked the best in attack, but Newcastle defense is atrocious, and so playing the 2 of them would just be maybe one leap of faith too far. I kind of do want to play the fixtures, so at this point in time I am thinking about playing both Mbeumo and Tony, but this could definitely change. I could very easily play Livramento instead of Rafinha, who has got a slightly tougher matchup in terms of Tottenham away. But if he does continue to play on the right wing, that would be on the side with Sergio Reguilon and also Ben Davies. I don't think the 2 of them as a pairing are the 2 best defenders, so I do think Rafinha does have some potential to actually get some attacking returns and a bit of joy on that right wing if he is playing there. So Rafinha is also just a natural talent. He just looks so good on the eye. So leaving him out on the bench could be a tough pill to swallow, especially if he does return for us. So at the moment, I have decided to play him. Antonio Wolves away, I think is a good enough fixture to be playing him. And the way that West Ham are attacking, I wouldn't feel too comfortable, I think, benching any of their attackers. So for the time being, I have got Antonio starting. Vardy does have Chelsea at home, but Vardy's unlikely to stay in my team this particular game week. He does have some good fixtures after this game week against Chelsea. I think he's got like Watford, Southampton, Villa and Newcastle, so he does have some good fixtures. he just doesn't seem to do the business. I'm sure once I sell him, he's going to be starting to score again, because that's just how FPL works. But he just never seems to do well for me, and I think I do prefer going for Kane instead, I think, or at least another attacker, maybe in terms of Callum Wilson as well. So Vardy's unlikely to be staying in the team. And in terms of the bench there, Mason Mount has got Leicester away. He's on the bench there at the moment because he has had this kind of dental issue, and we saw actually in the game after the last international break, he was named on the bench. So there could be potential for that. Chelsea have got a big enough squad that they can very easily rotate. So for that reason, I've got Mason Mount on the bench. Livramento against Norwich on the bench there, I'm not 100% comfortable with, but I do try to favour the attackers wherever I can. Norwich do have a tendency to concede a lot of chances down their left side, which is the side that Livramento would be attacking on. So I am keeping that in the back of my mind, but for the time being, this is how I've got the team set up. I think what's more important to consider for my Game Week 12 team selection is actually the players I'm looking to bring in. Coming into Game Week 12, as I mentioned, I do have the 2 free transfers. I do have 1.6 million in the bank. I actually have exact funds to do Vardy and Mount to Harry Kane and Diogo Jota, which looks like 2 great transfers in. I could alternatively also do Vardy and Mount out for Callum Wilson and Heung-min Son. So really, for me in my own head, it really comes down to Harry Kane versus Heung-min Son. I have mentioned previously that I do prefer Son because he is £2 million cheaper. He does have that added benefit of being a midfielder, so he does get that extra clean sheet point and the extra point for a goal if he does score. So what I'll get into now is a bit of a slight stats comparison in terms of Kane versus Son, just to hopefully give you my updated thoughts on that, because my thinking has changed slightly on this. So just comparing Kane and Son, if you look at the stats and look what they've done so far this season, all the signs point towards Heung-min Son because he's £2 million cheaper. His points per appearance is much better than Harry Kane's. He's got the 6 attacking returns compared to 2 for Kane's, and Kane's only came in that one single match against Newcastle. Obviously, they've got the same next 4 fixtures: Leeds, Burnley, Brentford and Norwich. A great 4-game stretch ahead for Kane and Son. What I thought was interesting also was just looking at the 2 kind of average positions of Kane and Son in the 2 games they've had so far under Antonio Conte. So the average position up the top there is their game that they had in Europe against Vitesse, and the bottom there is actually their last Premier League game against Everton. One thing to note, I guess, in that game against Vitesse is that Heung-min Son, the number 7, was actually the furthest forward, and Harry Kane was kind of playing, in behind him. Whereas in the game against Everton, he actually was, playing basically just on the same level as Heung-min Son. Or Harry Kane was playing, on the same level as Heung-min Son. It looks like, looking at that average position map, it just seems like Son is the clear winner because he's playing just as advanced, if not more advanced, than Harry Kane. He's got the better underlying stats. You can see there in terms of the expected goals, expected assists, better expected goals threat. Kane's got that more expected assist threat because he does have that tendency to drop deep and create chances instead. And so if you combine that XG and XA, Heung-min Son just kind of edges out in terms of the expected goal involvement. You could argue that that's actually a positive for Kane, is that, you look at him and you think, oh, he's not playing very well, his body language doesn't look good, but on a stats basis, he's still matching Son. And so you think even with some slight new manager bounce, you would think that his stats would get better than Son's. That's one thing I have thought about in terms of going for Kane instead of Son. And I am recording this after he's just banged in 7 goals over the international break. It was Albania and San Marino, so you can't read too much into it. But I think the fact that he has just scored a bunch of goals, yes, opposition is very weak and probably not even as good as any of the Premier League opposition. The fact that he's scoring those goals, I think, should add to his confidence just a little bit. Maybe I'm just telling myself this just because I'm thinking I'm actually wanting to go for Kane now instead of Son, but I do think it's something that we should consider. Just also watching from highlights in the games, it does seem like he is actually a little bit more in terms of being in the box. I know the average position doesn't really show this, but I think he is actually taking up some better positions under Conte, and so I feel like some of the signs there are better for Kane. One also added benefit of going for Kane is that I just do feel a little bit more comfortable captaining him over Son because he does have that penalty benefit. I think it's game weeks 14 and 15 when he's got Brentford and Norwich. Salah has got Everton and he has got Wolves, so you still very easily could captain Salah, but I do think if we have the potential to potentially go against Salah, Harry Kane against Brentford or Harry Kane against Norwich, I think is probably what I'd most feel comfortable with. I could captain Son, but I think the fact that Kane has got penalties would make me edge towards Kane. I know there hasn't been that many penalties in the Premier League so far this season, but I still would feel a bit more comfortable captaining Kane over Son. So at the moment, my current thinking is going for Kane over Son. If you look back at my team, it actually suits going for Kane just a little bit better because I do have that flexibility of having that premium forward, and I can afford to go from Vardy to Kane in one straight move. So what I'll get into now though is that Son and Wilson option or the Kane and Jota option. I'll run both of them through live FPL just to show you my thinking as to why I'm actually leaning that Kane and Jota route. So I've just jumped onto live FPL just to kind of show you my transfer plans with both the Kane and Jota option and also the Son and Wilson option. So just running the scenario with Kane and Jota to start with. As I mentioned, I can do Jamie Vardy and Mason Mount to Jota and Kane for free with both of my 2 free transfers. So I think the fact that I can do it also with 0.0 in the bank, maybe there's some psychological bias, but it does make me feel, oh, maybe it's fate that I should go for these 2. But that's a bit of a silly reason, but I can do it for free, which is obviously very nice. But I've just added the pair in there. Now I'll just sub in Jota. Now again, this is probably where it's a scenario I don't even have to technically bring in Jota this game week because it is Arsenal, which is maybe not the easiest fixture, and I could just do the 1 free transfer and then I could roll the second one into next game week and then bring in Jota. The reason I'm potentially thinking about just bringing it forward this week is that I probably will want him eventually, and given that he's on a kind of a shortened window of opportunity in terms of, his availability depends really on Firmino's injury. Every week that I don't get Jota means Firmino is recovering, so I kind of just think just get him now, kind of maximize the window of opportunity that we have with Jota. Now again, a bit of a benching dilemma. I could potentially bench Mbeumo or I could bench Rafinha. I think I'd be benching one of the 2 though for Jota. And that's probably how I'd be lining up here for game week 12. So I'd be playing my 4 premium defenders. I don't really think I can drop any of them the way that they're playing at the moment. And then we have Salah, Rafinha and Jota, Tony, Kane and Antonio, and then we could potentially have Mbeumo instead of Rafinha. And that would be how I'd be lining up for game week 12. Moving ahead to game week 13, looking at the team, it actually doesn't look like the best game week on paper in terms of we've got a lot of players who are versing kind of tougher opposition. You can see Ramsdale in goal against Newcastle is perfectly fine, but we've got Chelsea defenders both playing Manchester United. Obviously Manchester United, you could argue form wise is not the best, but then we've got Man City also against West Ham. That's a tough matchup, and we've got Antonio obviously up against Man City. So it's not the best matchups on paper in this particular game week. Mbeumo does have Everton, as does Tony. Potentially I could bench, maybe Antonio for one of the 2, but I don't think I'd be looking to do that. So to be honest, I think game week 13 would be just one of those weeks where I just kind of have to cop it on the chin, and I probably wouldn't be expecting to have a great game week 13, but I would like to roll the free transfer because I do think we have enough good players in this particular game week just to get by. We might be a small red arrow, but I think I'd have to cop this one on the chin. So let's hypothetically say that I do roll the free transfer in game week 13. Now moving ahead to game week 14, as you can see there are 2 free transfers, and again nothing in the bank, so I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but if I have any kind of indication that there will be price changes happening in terms of Jota or Kane going up in price or Vardy going down, I may pull the trigger and do it early because I don't really want to miss out on the pair of them just due to some price changes. So moving ahead into game week 14, the reason I wanted to roll that free transfer in game week 13, even despite our players not having great matchups, is that you can see here Brentford have got Tottenham away. They still have okay fixtures after this. Just scrolling up just a little bit, they've got Leeds away and then there's Watford. You could technically hold them, but I have a feeling that by this point in time I probably will be frustrated with them if they if they continue to blank. And so I think in this particular game week it would be a case of trying to create some extra funds and just get rid of them. As I've mentioned in my wildcard video, potentially look to take some money out of my forwards down the line is the way that I'm looking to go. And so this would be a week where I do it, Tony against Tottenham. By then Tottenham could be better established defensively with Conte having a few more, weeks or a bit more time to, kind of get his, practices in place. And so what I would do here is probably downgrade to maybe not to a Keenan Davis, just because this would be a time where we're getting a lot of fixtures, a lot of rotation. Instead of what I'd just do is go down to the cheapest playing forward. Now, someone I have considered is Emmanuel Dennis from Watford. One reason being is that if he is continuing to play, he's 5.2 million, so he's pretty cheap. And Watford also do have some good fixtures from game week 16 onwards, so he could be a handy rotation option around that busy Christmas period. So that's one way I have decided to potentially go. Obviously Dennis has got Chelsea, so I would be benching him in this particular game week. And so obviously we would need to play one more attacker, and this is when I'd probably would upgrade Mbeumo. That move, I'd have roughly around 6.9 mil in the bank to be able to upgrade Mbeumo. And that's actually a great amount of money to be able to get in, Conor Gallagher or Smith Rowe. Looking at the fixtures there, you can see Gallagher in this particular game week would have Leeds away and then Manchester United away, but then it's Everton, Southampton, Watford. So pretty decent run of fixtures there still for Gallagher. Could potentially even go for Smith Rowe, but he has got Manchester United in this particular game week. So Gallagher is probably the way that would go. So I've just brought in Gallagher for Mbeumo, and then I would be just playing him there. And this would be how I would be lining up for game week 14. So sorry, I'm just trying to keep track of all the game weeks in my head. And we still would have 1.1 million in the bank due to that kind of Tony downgrade, kind of freeing up some funds. And so now, skipping ahead to game week 15, we've got the one free transfer, 1.1 million in the bank. Again, it's going to be one of those game weeks where I don't think we've got the best team on paper, but this is just what's going to happen. We're not going to have perfect game weeks, but Ramsdale against Everton is okay. Both of our Chelsea defenders against West Ham, not ideal, and obviously we have Antonio coming up against them. But the midfield I think is looking okay. Cancelo's got Watford, so that's a great fixture on paper. Salah and Jota have got Wolves. Rafinha's got Brentford, so still, again, a good play there. Gallagher does have Manchester United away, but United haven't been looking the best defensively. Maybe I could play Livramento instead of Gallagher, but I technically could also just keep this game week, without making a transfer, and I could roll it into game week 16. Reason being that I'd like to do that is game week 16 is when I really want to be targeting Ronaldo, because that's when Manchester United face Norwich. So that's why I'd maybe look to roll in that particular game week, just so I can make a few extra moves, maybe be a bit more aggressive in that particular game week. So say hypothetically game week 15, I don't make any free transfer, I then would continue forward to game week 16. And so now we're in game week 16, we've got 2 free transfers, 1.1 million in the bank. Now the team's looking a bit better in this particular game week because we'll have both of our Chelsea defenders up against Leeds, Ramsdale, our goalkeeper, against Southampton, Villa for Trent, Cancelo's got Wolves. The midfield and the forwards is where we're having some issues. Rafinha, this is when Leeds get into their really tough run. You can see they're Chelsea, City, Arsenal and Liverpool. I definitely would not be wanting to hold Rafinha in this pretty tough run. This is when West Ham also get into a nice run of games. You can see there they've got Burnley, Arsenal, then it gets into Norwich and Southampton. Kane does have Brighton, but this is again when we would make that switch to Ronaldo. Obviously we could still potentially go for Bruno Fernandes, but I have a feeling I'm probably going to want Ronaldo because he's furthest up in the field. His stats are probably better than Bruno's, and so Ronaldo's probably who I'd go for. Obviously, I'd have plenty of money in the bank to be able to afford that. I've got 0.9 in the bank, and this gives me the option of also then taking out Rafinha and bringing in one of those West Ham assets because they've got that really nice run of games. And so, noting that Benrahma could be away on AFCON probably means that Bowen and Fornal is probably going to be a little bit more nailed on. So we can just determine at this point in time which one of the two looks better. Let's say for now we'll go for Bowen because Bowen's been posting some really good stats. That would be the potential 2 moves in that particular game week. We would still have 1.1 in the bank, so a pretty decent amount of budget to work with, which I don't actually mind in game week 16 because, as I mentioned numerous times, this is going to be a busy Christmas period. Having that little bit of extra money in the bank can help us react to situations a little bit quicker. Like for example, that 1.1 in the bank, I mean going from Brownhill up to a 5.5 midfielder. Maybe Smith Rowe probably would be a bit too expensive at that point in time, but someone could emerge in that period of time. We could potentially upgrade Dennis, I don't know, to maybe a better playing striker. We could even upgrade Livramento to another defender. So I just like having that 1.1 million in the bank. The notable admission though with this plan of starting with Kane and Jota is Foden. Getting to Phil Foden is a bit tough, basically because of that Jota selection, but we're in game week 16. At this point in time, Firmino could be back, and this is when potentially you could just do Jota to Foden. So that 1.1 million in the bank would give you enough money to actually go Jota to Foden, because City do have some very nice fixtures from game week 14. So that is one notable admission from this kind of plan that I've made. But the same thing is going to happen with the Callum Wilson and the Heung-min Son plan. So you can see here the reason why I'm preferring this plan is that it was very, very easy for me to go to Ronaldo by going for Kane. So just going up there, obviously I haven't saved the team, so you can't see the moves in game week 16, but it basically would be Rafinha and Kane to Bowen and to Ronaldo. And so you can see that I haven't had to book in that many free transfers from game week 12 onwards. It still leaves me a bit of flexibility to react to situations. It normally leaves me a bit of money in the bank as well to be able to react to situations a little bit better, be a bit more flexible. So that's one reason why I'm potentially leaning towards this Kane and Jota plan. But what I'll get into now though is the plan, how it looks for Son and Wilson. And so again, starting back at the game week 12 team, 2 free transfers, 1.6 million in the bank. I very easily could do the Mountain Vardy to Son and Wilson. And again, similar benching dilemma. Let's hypothetically say we bench Rafinha in this example for Son. That's how we could potentially line up for game week 12 if I do decide to go for Son and Wilson. Now, game week 13 would have 1 free transfer, 2.1 million in the bank. If you remember from that previous example, game week 13 was a week where I thought I didn't have that many good options playing in this particular game week. What I can do in this game week is it gives me a bit of a quicker route out of the Brentford options, and I can go from Mbeumo to Jota in one move if Jota doesn't move too much in price, because this would be 7.6 million in the bank, and so currently I could afford it. Obviously Jota could go up in price and that would blow this whole plan up, but that could be one way that I go. That improves the team, I think, just that little bit more. Instead of having Mbeumo against Everton, I've got Jota at home to Southampton. So I think that's a much better move to be making in game week 13. Now again, coming to game week 14, similar to what I had in the previous plan, this is probably when I would take some money out of Tony. I'm sure by this point in time he's frustrated the hell out of me and I want to get him out of my team. And so up against Tottenham, I'd be like, yep, let's take him out. And I probably would go again with someone like Dennis from Watford just to create some funds, but get someone who's cheap enough but also playing just for some added bench depth. And obviously I've still got Rafinha on the bench there, so I would just sub in Rafinha for Dennis and it would be just that one free transfer. Now you can kind of see maybe already the reason why I'm potentially maybe not leaning towards this plan is that I'm booking in transfers a little bit more often in every game week, and I think that's always risky because things can crop up at any point in time, and then injuries, suspensions, whatever. And if I've booked in these transfers for every single game week, it makes it a little bit more inflexible compared to that previous plan where yes, I was booking in some free transfers, but it was 2 in one game week and then it let me roll in one other game week. So it just meant in those game weeks where I didn't book in a free transfer, if something did happen, I still have the option to do it without taking a hit. So game week 15 in my Willed Son plan, I should have just kept calling that for the entire video. 1 free transfer, 1.5 million in the bank. This week, I don't think I'd be looking to make a transfer. Yes, again, we have that similar problem of Antonio is up against Chelsea, and when obviously we've got our 2 Chelsea defenders up against a good West Ham attack. But we've seen that Wilson's got Burnley at home, and so the midfield also looks really good. Son against Norwich, Rafinha, Brentford, and obviously Liverpool against Wolves is a great fixture. The only downside, obviously, is that in that previous example, we could potentially go for Kane captaincy against Norwich. Obviously, I still could captain Son against Norwich, but for reasons I've outlined previously, I'm not sure if I'd be as comfortable doing that. So in this particular game week, I would ideally probably roll the free transfer because now we're in game week 15. So that would mean 2 free transfers to game week 16 to be able to bring in Ronaldo, because I think he's the main target for game week 16. Okay, so we've got to game week 16, 2 free transfers, 1.5 million in the bank. So we've got a little bit extra money throughout the whole period of time with this particular draft. We could use that 1.5 million to maybe upgrade Rafinha to like Foden, potentially, if we wanted to do that, a little bit earlier in this plan. But for the time being, you can see that I've been doing other transfers just to kind of make money and stuff. That's basically so I can get Ronaldo in for game week 16. So I would probably be taking out Wilson here because, as you can see, Wilson was a very kind of short-term player because you can see that Wilson has got a very tough run. Liverpool, Man City, United, then it's Everton. So yeah, he would definitely make way for Ronaldo in this particular instance. And so we'd be pretty short on funds here. As you can see, their budget remaining, we'd need about £3.5 million. And the most obvious place to get it, maybe it could be one of our defenders, but that still wouldn't be enough to make it in one particular move. It would have to be for Son. We'd have to take out Son to make money for Ronaldo. And so 6.7 million in the bank. Again, we could go for Bowen as I had in that previous example. And I could potentially leave the team like that. The problem is that you can see their leads. I still would have Rafinha with Chelsea, City, Arsenal and Liverpool. And I don't really have a great bench option at that point in time to even just bench Rafinha. I could play Livramento or I could play Dennis if he is playing. Maybe that could be the way to go. But if, say, realistically, I'm like, no, I don't want to actually go for keep Rafinha for that month ahead. 6.9 in the bank. We could then maybe bring in someone like Gallagher. The downside is that, I had Gallagher earlier in my last transfer plan, whereas in this one I'm only bringing him in game week 16, so I've kind of missed a lot of the good fixtures. Obviously that could be, I still could be okay bringing Gallagher at this point in time, but as you can see there, I would have a bit more money in the bank, 1.1, but that would be for a -4. So you can see in this particular plan, I've had to take that extra -4, which the other plan didn't, if I do want to go for Ronaldo, and I've had to book in a couple of like extra transfers in particular game weeks, which the other plan didn't do. And so I know this has been taking a long time, a lot of tinkering, a lot of going through different game weeks. I'll show one more slide, I promise, just showing the summary of the different transfer plans that I went through. And so I know that was a lot of transfer plans to kind of get through, so it'll be helpful just to kind of take a quick screenshot of from live FPL's transfer plan of what those different moves look like in the 2 different plans. As I kind of wanted to summarize, with the Kane and Jota route, it definitely makes it easier for me to get to Ronaldo. No need to take hits. I get the likes of Gallagher and Jota just that little bit earlier in comparison to the Son and Wilson plan, where I have to book in just those little few extra transfers in around game week 13 and 14. And it also means I have to take that additional -4 to be able to afford Ronaldo, or also to get rid of Rafinha for those pretty tough fixtures for Leeds from game week 16 onwards. That's the reason why I'm kind of leaning to this Kane and Jota option. I know that's a very long way of me getting to that, but that's the way that I'm going at the moment. That's very likely going to be the way that I'm going to end up with my team for this particular game week. Hopefully you guys found some use out of this. I know the video is probably going to be a little bit longer, but hopefully it gave you some kind of food for thought about your own transfer plan. So definitely drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it and found some use out of it. Also let me know in the comments below which of these 2 plans you do prefer. I'd be really interested to hear your point of view as well. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. As always, really appreciate a thumbs up. Do please consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoyed the content and this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.